Okay, let's go. So today we're going to be training glutes and hanging out together as always. I have been really on a roll with my content lately, and I'm just enjoying, getting back into my training. So let's go through a killer glute sesh. I'm going to show you some new ones as well. But yeah, it feels good to be back into it. First, I'm going to start with some stretches. So we've got a couch stretch and a Copenhagen plank hold. I actually can't even say I live in the Gold Coast anymore because my tan disqualifies me from living here. So with this one, basically, what we want to do is tuck our tailbone underneath. Super important. We don't want it to be like that. The whole idea is that we are scooping like Michael Jackson and tuck your hips underneath to get that the lengthened hip flexor. So we're squeezing our glutes. We're going to hold that for 10 seconds. Driving our knee into the ground, then we're going to release it. We're going to do that again. Hold and squeeze for 10 seconds. Then we're going to release. We're going to do 6 rounds of that. And that is known as a couch PNF stretch. Possibly one of the best warm-ups that you can do for mobility if you are going into a glute day or anything, with hip extension. What this one does is it lengthens our hip flexor, our rec fem, which is going to allow you to get more hip extension when we do exercises like hip thrusts. If you sit at a desk, if you have very tight hips, like most of us do, you won't be able to reach full hip extension on exercises like hip thrusts. And also, over time, if they get tighter and tighter, what can actually happen is it can track the patella and you can end up with, knee pain and knee issues. So that's why it is important to add either these ones, or you could do some kind of like a split squat where you're tucking your hips under and putting your crotch in the back of your shoe. Something I've been thinking about a lot lately is, so often we are always trying to chase towards something, always aiming to be something, to be our highest version, like always kind of moving towards that vision, but it's like, I had this epiphany the other day. Why can't we just be there now? Why can't we just live as though, and then it becomes, right? What I like to do is if I'm driving and I see like a line or a point I drive past, I pretend that as soon as I get past that point, I'm automatically stepped into my highest version ever. And you feel amazing. You start seeing synchronous numbers. Like, trust me on this. If you just decide right now when you catch yourself to live as your higher self instead of striving to eventually be something, it's very powerful. And you will see some pretty big shifts in your life, or at least that day. That's what I see when I start to adopt this and just being cognizant of how am I acting right now. All right, so we've done both sides. I'm just going to do a little bit more because my hips feel extra tight today. Key is really not extending through our back. When I really tuck the hips underneath. The second one we are doing is a Copenhagen plank hold. It's a mouthful. So this works, it warms up our TA muscles, our transverse abdominals. So hips forward, extending through our hips, hold. We are going to hold this for 30 to 90 seconds or until you can't hold anymore, which for me, I'll probably tap out around the 15-second mark. It really does work your adductors, but also your core. Really gets our deep core muscles to make it easier to brace when we perform our glute exercises. Very, very important for glutes. I could not recommend more enough. You really want to be overemphasizing your core work before your glute day, especially if you have weak core strength. If you do not have the core strength, what's going to happen is you'll end up getting a mad erector workout and a sore back, but not the glute stimulus you want. So what training your core does and strengthening it, it's like imagine a bridge. If that bridge is made of tinfoil, it's going to crumple, right? You won't be able to really access your glutes. The back will be the limiting factor. So the core is like literally the foundation, the trunk of the tree. So to warm up your core beforehand will make it a lot easier to brace, to keep it activated during the lift. I normally hold this for 30 to 90 seconds, about 2 times on each side. If you're just warming up your rectus abdominis, so just doing like crunches before your workout, I wouldn't typically recommend this. We want our entire core warmed up, our transverse abdominis, our deep core muscles, because part of the deep core muscles are the QLs that run along the spine, and that's what's going to help to protect you and keep everything locked in. If you're just, you're right. If you're just training the very surface, the rectus abdominis, they're not going to do a whole lot for supporting you during those big movements like RDLs. All right, I think we're ready to go into training now. Let's go. First, we'll be diving straight into kickbacks, but not just any kickbacks. I've been absolutely dying to show you guys this variation because not many people know how to do them. They aren't a very common one, and so often I see glute med kickbacks done incorrectly. So let's just fix this shit. I'm going to show you guys how to do a proper one to build a massive shelf booty. Let's go. If you are unsure whether to put kickbacks at the start or the finish, most people are like, do I put my glute med work at the start or finish? It doesn't matter too much, but depending on what your biggest focus is, which muscle you want to grow, that is where we want to be positioning it first. So if my goal is to predominantly grow my upper shelf booty, I'm going to be putting it first as opposed to last. And I also like it there because I feel that at the end of the workout, you're probably quite fatigued in your back. So it makes a little bit more sense to put it at the start. But don't put so many isolation exercises before your main compounds, because if they're at the end, we need to take into consideration like how much energy are you going to have for them. Are you going to be quite fatigued when it comes to your RDLs and your hip thrusts, which are going to make the biggest difference in growth? Are your erectors going to be sore, you know? So kickbacks, but not like an excessive amount of isolations before the bigger movements. I normally rack this at the bottom. We want to grab a stack of plates about 3 inches tall and put them about a foot away from the cable. Now remember, all of our anatomies are quite different. For people that are taller, you are going to have to adjust exercises so they suit you a bit better, okay? And people that are a bit shorter, the same, you know. Just because you watch something, someone do something else, it might mean you need to adjust it. Trust me when I say that you will be grateful for all of the core activation work that you have done before you jump into kickbacks, because this is the most fundamental thing. You need to have the core strength when you do kickbacks. Otherwise, it'll just be a mad erector workout. You just be extending through your erectors. The last couple of months, and I don't think I'm alone when I say this, I've been giving a great deal of thought to my purpose. We could really run in circles, wondering what our purpose on earth is, what our soul mission is. But what I've realized in my time delving into spirituality and doing some deep diving is that we don't actually need to know what our purpose is. We just, like, our only job is to follow what feels in alignment. And by doing that, you will be moving towards your soul's purpose. If you just follow what you feel lights your soul on fire and you do it fucking good, you cannot fail. I've got some D-handle cuffs here. These ones are great, not sponsored by the way, but I've been using them for such a long time. It is no excuse to come to the gym and not have cuffs anymore. Come on guys, we're in 2025. So grab these bad boys. We are going to cuff them just below our calf there. And yeah, let's go. So cuff it, we're gonna step over. We're gonna have this foot, so our inner leg, on a right hand angle outwards. We're gonna pull a slight hip hinge. Take a big breath into our diaphragm, not our rib cage. Contract our core. Keep your core contracted through the movement. That's super important. and kick back on a 45. I actually like to do these when I'm on a pair of these cables because you can actually hold and stabilize yourself a little bit better. We'll try both ways. Stepping over, grab onto your hip. Over time, if you get to the type of weight load that you can't stabilize yourself anymore with just holding on with one hand, I would use two cables. But basically it looks like this. So it's kind of like a skater kickback. Make sure that these are placed quite a distance away. So, and we really want to be front on. We don't want to be twisted off to the side. We've got to be front on. Kicking back on that 45 and don't allow your hips to shift in. We do not want them to shift. We just want them facing the front. So big breath, tight core, hips not shifting. Kicking straight back. Big breath, tight core. All right, so we're going to give this a go on this kind of angle. I'm going to hold on to the cables here. I'm going to kick back on that 45. I really recommend a 10 to kind of 20 rep range. But honestly, if you can do 50 reps, go for it. Don't stop at 15. We need to be challenging ourselves. It's been a while, definitely quite rusty. Definitely doesn't feel as good as it used to. But over time, we end up building up that endurance. So don't worry if you can't get it perfect at the start, if it maybe doesn't feel too good. Adjust it. Be kind to yourself. Now I'm feeling a hip thrust. A lot of girls ask, or guys, should I do a barbell hip thrust or should I do a glute drive? What is the difference? I personally prefer a glute drive. It's just like easy as fuck to set up. But with a hip thrust is just a bit more effort. I like the ease of this, but you can get glute drives that aren't so favorable. I mean, what's the brand here? Hammer Strength is a really good one, but I don't love the Nautilus one. I feel it a little bit too much in the quads. So it's kind of just down to like individual preference. But I'm going to show you some tips with this, which are a fave. This feels so good. With hip thrusts, a cue that I find has really, really helped me to keep the tension in the glutes and out of the back is focus on keeping your core really, really tight all the way down. And on the way up, take a big breath at the top. Really important to keep our core tight. But that is the main thing. Second, imagine when you're coming up that someone is pushing down your hips. They've got their hands on your hips and they're pushing them down and you're resisting against that. This has really helped me to keep tension in my glutes instead of just exploding up with everything else. And on the way down, I pretend that someone's got their hands under my hips and they're pushing up to keep that tension in the glutes. Makes such a big difference. We do quads as well. We want them to be the same. We want our femurs to be the same angle as our feet. So you shouldn't be able to see your feet sticking out. They should be kind of the same angle. And we want to plant with an even foot distribution. So with any glute exercise, you want to make sure that you're creating an even foot distribution, like a tripod foot. Big toe, little toe, and heel. They should be the pressure points. As we go down, we don't want to lift our toes up. That's what I used to do. And yeah, you'll keep way more tension in your glutes, RDL, squats, everything, if you keep that even foot distribution and stay quite crunched in as well. We don't want to be extending through the back. I personally like to wriggle down a little bit more on the seat. I find you can get more hip extension that way. And yeah, it helps to keep everything a little bit tighter instead of extending so much on the way down. You'll probably feel it a lot less in your back. This week I've been in such a good mind state. Like, I don't know, it just feels good to be able to wake up and feel excited about life again. To be honest, because for a while it wasn't. I got like anxiety in the middle of the night and in the morning, like dreading get out of the bed. And it ain't fun if you've been there. But, you know, what I've learned out of my whole tower experience from this year, you know, sometimes everything has to fall apart before it can come together again. But, and also to appreciate the things you have. And I had so much fear when I was at that point where my whole life had just kind of fallen apart. You know, I moved here in my car with nothing. I left my dog behind and everything I knew to start a new life, to take a risk, and probably the boldest risk I've taken. But what I've realized is a lot of things in our life need to go, and it can feel like, why is this happening to me? But to be able to make room for all of the benefits to come in, you know, the life that's more aligned with us, the things that actually serve us, we've got to do some clearing first. And that clearing can be very uncomfortable. It's like if you've got a plate, we need to scrape the rotten food off it before we can have a serving of delicious food, you know? You wouldn't appreciate the great times without the shit times happening. And it really strengthens you. It's easy to forget sometimes in life that we are actually here to evolve, to grow. It can be easy to fall into the victim mindset. And I've been there so many times this year before you just get sick of it. And you're like, I refuse to let my mind have me in shackles for the rest of my life. Like, I refuse to be a prisoner of my own mind. It's very easy to fall into victimhood, you know? But in owning that we can change things, we then step into empowerment instead of being a helpless victim. I'm not going to lie, this workout has been a bit of a flog today. It has been, not a flog, a slog. I'm still in recovery mode, so that is why. But I did really want to show you guys a sick hack for your abductions. Most people, when they do abductions, don't really know how to perform them. Depending on which muscle group you want to train, whether you want to target your glute max or your glute medius, whether you want that shelf booty or the glute max, is going to depend on the position you use with a seated abduction. So if I lean forward, that's going to be more glute max, which is the larger cake. And then if you lean back, that is going to be our shelf. So that's going to be our glute med. I'm going to do glute medius on these ones because I want that shelf. I also grab these, like most abduction machines, they do not have great range. So by placing some pads in there, you can increase your range of motion and get a deeper stretch in the glute. We want it on the furthest in setting. I'm going to scoot our hips forward. Now, really important with these ones, to tuck your tailbone underneath, keep your core on, and drive out. If we extend through our back, it's not going to actively engage the glute med as well. So we really want to keep the hips under, and it's also going to put your back into extension, which can lead to injury. So like that. You can do 1 1/4 reps to make it even more intense. Really keeping your core tight. And really control it instead of flinging it out. I'm always controlling it. I'm always, you know, using that strategic pause instead of just throwing it. I was just speaking to someone who had a mad shoulder injury, and basically, like, if you have a muscle group that you want to grow, it's really important to not neglect all of the other muscle groups. Like, if your goal is to grow your glutes, We mustn't neglect quads or everything else because they are going to be the limiting factor that stop you from progressing. If you only train glutes, when you do a hip thrust, your quads are going to reach muscle failure before your glutes do. So that's why it's important to have a little bit of volume in there still for the other less important, seemingly to you, muscle groups. You'll see guys all the time and they will train their chest a bunch and they'll end up looking like this and have shoulder injuries because their scapula starts drifting forward. So you need to do rhomboid work, back work to even everything out. Everything in moderation. That is everything. We are done for today. Hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a bit of a short session, but I still enjoyed chatting with you guys. A little bit fried today, but yeah. Have a great week.